This story is titled, My Now Ex-Wife Secretly Got Pregnant and Started Demanding Child Support Money, but I quietly arranged a DNA test and delivered divorce papers to her right in the delivery room. Hey everyone, my name is Tom and I'm 33 years old. I guess I should start from the beginning since some people have asked for the full story. This is going to be long, but I think it's worth sharing. My wife, I'll call her Kelly, and I had what I thought was a pretty good marriage, at least for the first 4 years. We met back in college when we were both young and full of ambition. She was absolutely gorgeous, but what really caught my attention was how genuinely interested she seemed in my goals and dreams instead of just looking for someone to party with. At the time, I was working hard on my business administration degree, putting in long hours at the library and building connections for my future. Kelly was studying education, planning to become a teacher. We hit it off immediately. There was this instant connection that I hadn't experienced with anyone else before. After graduation, I jumped straight into starting my own marketing consultancy. Those first couple of years were absolute hell. I was working 90-plus-hour weeks, constantly stressing about making rent payments, and wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake going out on my own instead of finding a safe corporate job like most of my classmates. Kelly was incredibly supportive during that difficult period. She would bring me energy drinks at 3 a.m. when I was preparing client presentations, give me passionate pep talks when potential clients ghosted me, and constantly reassured me that things would work out. She was the girlfriend of the year, doing everything she could to help me succeed. She even suggested putting her teaching career on hold to support me, saying she wanted to help me build something great together. At the time, I thought it was the most selfless gesture anyone had ever made for me. Looking back now, I should have seen that red flag waving directly in my face. When my business finally started making decent money, we moved into a nice house in a good neighborhood in Chicago. Kelly got heavily involved with a local church, and I mean obsessively involved. She started running women's groups, organizing charity events, constantly posting Bible quotes on her Instagram, and preaching about family values and the sanctity of marriage at every opportunity. But around year 4 of our marriage, things started feeling off. It began with small changes that were easy to dismiss individually. She stopped asking me about my day. Conversations that used to flow effortlessly began feeling scripted, as if she was just checking off boxes instead of actually listening to what I had to say. I would ask simple questions like, "How was Bible study?" or "Who showed up today?" And she'd answer with vague, clipped responses, clearly in a hurry to change the subject as quickly as possible. What really caught me off guard was her sudden interest in our finances, specifically my finances. Before this change, she had been content just having access to the credit cards and never asked much about the business details. Then, out of nowhere, she started wanting to know exact numbers. "How much did we make last quarter?" she'd ask randomly while we were watching TV. "What's the business value now?" she'd question over breakfast. "Do we have assets I don't know about?" she'd inquire with a strange intensity in her voice. At first, I thought she was just taking an interest, maybe trying to be more involved in our financial future together. Then I noticed her taking pictures of financial statements I had left out on my desk. One night, I caught her going through my office files when she thought I was asleep. "Just organizing," she claimed with an unconvincing smile, but I had caught her scanning documents with her phone. The tension between us grew steadily as the days passed by. I could feel us drifting further apart, like two ships silently moving in opposite directions at night. Then, I started noticing shifts in her routine that didn't add up. Her schedule became increasingly erratic, with random late nights and weekend trips that she couldn't quite explain coherently. She would leave the house wearing one outfit and come back in completely different clothes, brushing it off with a casual, "Oh, I spilled something," without offering any further details. One night I mentioned how we barely spent time together anymore and how she seemed different, like a stranger living in our house. She rolled her eyes dismissively. "You're imagining things," she said in a flat tone, but she wouldn't look at me when she said it. Around this time, she suddenly became super protective of her phone. She bought new clothes, sexier stuff that I never saw her wearing at home. She'd come back with stories that didn't quite match reality, like mentioning restaurants or towns they supposedly never visited, or having receipts for only one hotel room when she claimed 4 women went on the church retreat. I didn't want to believe what my instincts were screaming at me. I tried to convince myself that maybe I was just being paranoid from working too much, that the stress of running my own business was making me see problems that weren't really there. Then one night she came home late. Her hair was slightly messy, her makeup more smudged than usual. and there was this faint, unfamiliar scent clinging to her clothes. Something sharp like a cologne I definitely didn't own. I asked casually at first, trying to keep my voice steady despite the sinking feeling in my stomach. Long night? She barely looked at me as she kicked off her heels by the door. Yeah, Bible study ran late, then we grabbed dinner. You know how it is? Except I didn't know how it was, because Bible study used to end at 8 p.m., and now she was strolling in past midnight like it was perfectly normal. Smells like someone spilled cologne on you, I said, watching her reaction carefully. That's when her posture changed completely. Not guilty, as I might have expected, but defensive, like she was preparing for battle. She scoffed, crossing her arms defensively across her chest. You're seriously paying attention now. Maybe if you weren't always at the office, you'd actually know what's going on in my life. That wasn't an answer to my question. It was a deflection, and it landed exactly how she wanted it to, twisting the blame onto me instead of addressing the suspicious cologne scent. I could have pushed further, demanded a real explanation, but I already knew how this conversation would play out. If I accused her directly, she'd cry, turn it into me being paranoid, me being neglectful. I wasn't about to let her spin the narrative like that. So I got smart about it. I started checking credit card statements meticulously, looking at her location history when she'd leave her iPad unlocked. Pro tip for anyone going through something similar. Most people never log out of their accounts on their personal devices. And sure enough, the evidence was right there in black and white. Every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, she was at this address across town for exactly 2 to 3 hours. Some apartment complex I'd never heard her mention. One Thursday, I decided to leave work early and see for myself what was really going on. I parked across from the complex and waited, my heart pounding in my chest. At 2 p.m. sharp, Kelly pulled into the parking lot in her car. About 10 minutes later, this guy parks right next to her. Tall, gym bro type, with one of those tribal tattoos on his arm. Such a cliche, it was almost laughable, except there was nothing funny about watching my wife's face light up when she saw him. I took pictures of them, walking in together, all touchy-feely like a couple who couldn't keep their hands off each other. Sitting in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, I watched my wife, a woman I had built my entire world around, walk into another man's apartment with that same flirty energy she used to have with me years ago. My mind was screaming at me to storm up there and break the door down, to confront them both and unleash all the rage that was burning inside me. But I forced myself to stay put, to think rationally. Because rage is loud and often counterproductive, but revenge? Revenge is quiet and calculated. When she came out 2 hours later, I took more pictures. I watched them kiss goodbye like they had all the time in the world. Like there wasn't a husband sitting in a car nearby with his heart being shredded into pieces. Right then, something in me shut off emotionally. No more doubts, no more benefit of the doubt. The woman I loved was dead to me. I later found out the guy's name was Brian. I discovered that from her text messages when she left her phone to shower one night. He worked at her church as some youth pastor or something. The irony was too thick to ignore. The woman preaching about family values and the sanctity of marriage was sleeping with the youth pastor behind her husband's back. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I methodically gathered more evidence. Screenshots of texts, more photos of their meetups, hotel receipts I found in her purse. I even recorded a phone call where she told this Brian guy how she was going to leave me soon, and then they could finally be together openly. But the part that hurt the most wasn't just the cheating itself. It was finding out how long she had been planning my downfall, how calculated and cold-blooded the whole thing was. I went through her texts with Brian, and what I saw made me physically sick. This wasn't just some spontaneous affair driven by passion or a momentary lapse in judgment. She had been strategizing for months. I'm waiting for the right moment, she texted him. He's too busy with work to notice anything, she laughed in another message. Once I file, I'll push for alimony, she planned. He won't see it coming, she promised her lover. She wasn't just planning to leave me, she was methodically setting me up to bankroll her new life with Brian. They were laughing together about how she'd secure a soft landing for herself while leaving me high and dry. That's when I decided that she wasn't just going to walk away. I was making damn sure she'd leave with nothing. I arranged a meeting with my business accountant after hours, keeping it casual so as not to raise any red flags. I'm thinking about restructuring a few things, I told him, acting like it was just routine business planning. Over the next few weeks, I made several strategic financial moves. I prepaid my office lease for a year, paid down business loans faster than scheduled, and shifted my salary structure so more money stayed in the company instead of showing as personal income. I invested in new equipment, stuff I'd need eventually, but didn't technically need right now. On paper, it just looked like my business was managing cash flow responsibly. Nothing suspicious or out of the ordinary, just normal operations that coincidentally made me look a lot less liquid than I actually was. At the same time, I opened a new personal account at a different bank and started transferring small amounts. Nothing crazy that would raise eyebrows, just enough to build a cushion she wouldn't have access to. Everything I did was above board and fully documented. I wasn't hiding money illegally. I was just making sure she wouldn't get more than she deserved after betraying our marriage so thoroughly. And then, out of nowhere, she did me a favor. On a random Tuesday evening, she decided to blow everything up herself. I came home from work, and she was sitting on our couch with this weird, smug look on her face. "Tom," she said in that fake, sweet voice that made my skin crawl, "we need to talk." I knew exactly what was coming, but I played dumb. "What's up?" I asked, setting my laptop bag down. "I'm pregnant," she announced, looking directly at me. We hadn't been intimate in months, so unless she was carrying baby Jesus 2.0, this wasn't my child. Before I could say anything, she twisted the knife further. "But it's not yours. I've been seeing someone else. I want a divorce." She said it like she was ordering takeout. No guilt, no hesitation, no emotion whatsoever. 5 years of marriage, and she tossed it away like it was an expired coupon she no longer needed. I could feel the rage bubbling under my skin, my hands flexing at my sides. Every instinct screamed at me to throw the whole damn folder of evidence in her face, to drag her through the mud right then and there. But then it hit me. This was actually perfect. She had no idea that I already knew everything. She had no clue that I had been watching, documenting, and waiting. She thought she was in control, that she was the one ending things on her terms. I let a slow smirk spread across my face. "I see," I said calmly. That threw her off completely. She was clearly waiting for me to explode, to beg her to stay, to ask who the father was. But I just sat there, collected and composed. She doubled down, clearly unsettled by my reaction. "And just so you know, you'll still be paying me alimony. I gave up my career for you, so you owe me." I locked eyes with her, enjoying the moment more than I probably should have. "Kelly," I said evenly, "did you really think I wouldn't know about Brian?" The color drained from her face instantly, her confident facade crumbling before my eyes. I chuckled, savoring her shocked expression. "Tuesdays and Thursdays, right? 2 to 3 hours. Same apartment complex, same parking spot. You didn't even try to mix it up. You really thought I was that stupid?" She stiffened, her jaw tightening as she tried to regain her composure. I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered unconvincingly. "Oh, come on," I said, leaning back against the couch and stretching my arms along the back like I had all the time in the world. "Bible study runs late, huh? That must be a hell of a lesson plan if it requires lingerie in a hotel room." I was on a roll now, watching her squirm as I continued. "And Brian," I added, "real winner you picked there. Youth pastor, huh? Wonder how his congregation would feel about him knocking up a married woman while preaching family values." By this point, Kelly was fully panicking. She sat up straighter, her eyes darting around the room like she was searching for an escape route that didn't exist. "How long were you going to play me, Kelly?" I asked, tilting my head to the side. "You and your little boy toy were waiting for the right moment, right? Planning to milk me dry before you ran off together? What was it you said? He won't see it coming?" Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. I didn't let her recover or find her footing. I stood up, looking down at her with all the contempt I felt. "Let me make something very clear," I said, my voice low and steady. "You are not walking away from this as the winner. You are not taking a damn thing from me that I don't let you have." She tried to recover, masking her fear with fake confidence. "It's the law, Tom," she said, lifting her chin defiantly. "You can fight it all you want, but you'll lose." I gave her the smuggest smile I've ever given anyone in my life. "If you say so," I replied simply, knowing she had no idea what was coming. She thought she was hitting me with the ultimate power move by announcing her pregnancy and demanding a divorce. But really, she had saved me the trouble of figuring out how to confront her. All I had to do was smile and let her believe she was in control, while in reality, I was already 5 steps ahead of her. The next few weeks were strange, to say the least. Kelly moved out almost immediately, going straight into Brian's apartment. She filed for divorce citing irreconcilable differences, fancy legal talk for, "I want to bang other dudes without feeling bad about it." I met with several lawyers, one after another. The first three basically told me I was screwed. No-fault divorce state seemed to be their favorite phrase, repeated like some kind of legal mantra. Apparently, the fact that my wife was sleeping with the youth pastor and got pregnant by him didn't mean anything in court. The system didn't care about moral failings or broken vows, only numbers on a spreadsheet. But I kept looking until I found this attorney, I'll call him Victor, who at least didn't try to sugarcoat the situation. "Look, man, I'm not going to lie to you," he said, leaning back in his leather chair. "You're probably going to have to pay her something, but we can try to minimize the damage." When I showed Victor my financial statements and the steps I'd taken, he raised an eyebrow knowingly. "Interesting timing on some of these business expenses and restructuring," he remarked, giving me a meaningful look. He didn't say more about it. Couldn't legally advise me to hide assets, but I could tell he understood what I'd done. Well, this might help reduce the alimony calculation somewhat, but in this state, you're still looking at significant payments. That's when the wheels really started turning in my mind. The courts might not give a damn about her cheating, but her holier-than-thou church buddies definitely would. I decided to play it cool for the divorce proceedings, though, letting her think she was winning and giving her just enough rope to hang herself. Court day was surreal, like I was watching someone else's life unfold in front of me. I showed up in my best suit, clean-shaven and composed. Kelly came in with her fancy lawyer, wearing this modest outfit that made her look like she was auditioning for Sister Wives or something. The act was so fake it was almost laughable. This woman who'd been spending afternoons in a youth pastor's bed, now dressed like butter, wouldn't melt in her mouth. The judge looked bored as hell before we even started, like he'd seen this exact scenario play out 1,000 times before. Kelly's lawyer went first, spewing this rehearsed speech about how she had sacrificed her promising teaching career to support me, how she had managed our home while I built my business, how she deserved compensation for her contributions to the marriage. He painted her as this selfless partner who had given up everything for my success. When it was our turn, my lawyer presented the evidence of her cheating, the pregnancy, the fact she was already living with Brian. He did his best, but I could see it wasn't making the impact we hoped for. Kelly's lawyer stood up, straightening his expensive tie. "Your Honor, let's not forget that we are in a no-fault state," he said smugly, like those 3 words erased everything she had done. "While my client deeply regrets that her marriage did not work out, the law is clear. Marital misconduct is not a factor in determining spousal support. What is relevant is the financial disparity between these two parties." Hearing how casually this dismissed everything she'd done made me want to rip the whole damn courtroom apart. She had cheated, lied, gotten pregnant with another man's child, and somehow I was still expected to pay her for walking out on me. The system was designed to reward her betrayal. My lawyer tried to push back, emphasizing every bit of evidence again, making it clear that she wasn't just leaving a marriage. She was securing a financial safety net while shacking up with someone else. But the judge just sighed impatiently, waiting for us to finish our arguments so he could move on to the next case. When it came time for the ruling, he cleared his throat and dropped the hammer. While the court acknowledges Mr. Walker's concerns regarding his wife's infidelity, the law in this state is clear. Spousal misconduct is not a factor in determining alimony. Kelly smirked at me from across the room, that smug satisfaction written all over her face. The judge continued. Given Mrs. Walker's financial dependence during the marriage and her current unemployment status, the court finds that she is entitled to spousal support. Mr. Walker will pay $4,200 monthly for a period of 4 years or until Mrs. Walker remarries. $4,200 a month for 4 years to the woman who cheated on me and was carrying another man's child. I felt like I was taking crazy pills. But luckily, my financial moves had paid off to some extent. Instead of getting stuck with a $6,000 monthly payment, which is what her lawyer had been pushing for, the judge knocked it down to $4,200. Not great, but better than nothing. The best part? Kelly and her lawyer had no clue about the cash I still had stashed away, or that my business would magically bounce back once this was all over. Their victory celebration was premature. As we left the courtroom, Kelly couldn't resist being a smug, petty person right to the end. "Told you," she whispered as we passed each other in the hallway. "Should have just agreed to my terms from the beginning." Then she had the audacity to call Brian right in front of me, giggling like some lovesick teenager. "Baby, it's done! We won!" she squealed into the phone. "He has to pay! I told you the judge wouldn't care about the other stuff!" I said nothing, just watched her walk away thinking she'd gotten away with the perfect scam. But the game was just getting started, and she had no idea what was coming next. I paid the first alimony check right on time. I didn't complain, didn't make a fuss, didn't try to delay or argue. I even sent a polite email saying, "Payment sent. Please confirm receipt." Kelly seemed surprised by my lack of resistance. She had probably expected me to be bitter, to fight every payment, to give her more ammunition to use against me. Instead, I was playing the role of the perfect ex-husband, courteous, prompt with payments, distant but not hostile. She had absolutely no idea what was coming. You see, Kelly wasn't just a regular member of Harvest Community Church. She was their poster child for Christian values. She led the women's ministry, organized their marriage retreats, and frequently stood on stage during services, talking about God's plan for holy matrimony. Her father was a deacon, her mother ran the Sunday school program, and the whole family had carefully cultivated this perfect Christian image in their community. And I knew they would throw her under the bus the second they found out who she really was. I'd been meticulously collecting everything. The DNA test results confirming the baby wasn't mine, the time-stamped photos of her and Brian entering his apartment, screenshots of their explicit texts, hotel receipts, and even a recording of her mocking her church friends for being uptight prudes. That last one was particularly damning given her public persona. I put it all in a professional-looking folder and added a formal, respectful cover letter. To the elders of Harvest Community Church, I regret bringing this to your attention, but as a fellow believer, I feel it's my duty. My former wife, Kelly Walker, who leads several ministries in your congregation, has been engaged in behavior that contradicts your church's values. I've included documentation of her affair that began during our marriage, resulting in a pregnancy that is not mine, confirmed by DNA testing. Kelly is now living with this man while collecting substantial alimony from me. I share this not out of spite, but out of concern for the integrity of your ministry. Respectfully, Thomas Walker, I dropped the package off early Sunday morning when no one was around, slipping it through the mail slot in the church office door. Then I went home and waited for the storm to hit. The very next Sunday, I woke up to my phone blowing up with text messages from mutual church friends. "Dude, WTF did you do? Pastor just called emergency elder meeting before service. Kelly is losing her shit." I simply turned my phone off and went back to sleep. It felt amazing, not going to lie. Later that afternoon, I got a voicemail from Kelly. She was screaming so loudly I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "You absolute piece of shit! How could you do this to me? They kicked me out of women's ministry. My dad won't even look at me. You've ruined everything." I deleted it without calling back. I didn't need that negativity in my life anymore. More messages followed throughout the week, each one more desperate than the last. Her church friends had ghosted her completely. Her parents were taking time to pray about the situation. Church speak for, "We're disappointed in you and don't want to deal with this right now." The Christian school where she volunteered asked her not to come back. Even Brian was getting cold feet. Apparently, he hadn't signed up for all this drama. He thought he was getting a hot wife with a steady alimony check, an easy ride. Instead, he got a social outcast with a baby on the way and a whole lot of baggage he didn't anticipate. By Friday, he'd kicked her out of his apartment. So much for true love, huh? A week after I dropped off my evidence package, Kelly was summoned to a formal disciplinary hearing with the church elders. I only know this because she called me sobbing, completely falling apart at the seams. "Tom, please!" she begged through her tears. "You have to tell them it was all a misunderstanding. They're going to publicly discipline me. Do you know what that means? They'll announce it to the entire congregation. Everyone will know." "They already know, Kelly," I replied calmly. "That's kind of how church gossip works." "My dad might lose his position over this," she continued frantically. "My family has been at Harvest for 3 generations." "Should have thought about that before you slept with the youth pastor," I said, feeling nothing but cold detachment. She went quiet for a second, then in a small, broken voice, "He's not talking to me anymore." "Who, your dad?" I asked. "No, Brian," she admitted. He said this is too much drama, that I misled him about the divorce being clean and simple." I couldn't help but laugh at the irony. "So your soulmate bailed the second things got tough? Shocking." "I have nowhere to go, Tom," she cried desperately. "My parents won't let me stay with them. None of my friends are returning my calls." "Sounds like a personal problem," I said flatly. Can I come home? Just until I figure things out?" she asked. And the absolute nerve of this woman left me stunned for a moment. "It's not your home anymore, Kelly," I reminded her. "You gave that up when you decided to cheat." She started crying again, big dramatic sobs that once upon a time might have moved me to comfort her. What am I supposed to do? Get a hotel. You've got alimony money coming in. Figure it out, I told her before hanging up. Cold? Maybe. But after what she pulled, my sympathy tank was bone dry. The church hearing happened Wednesday night. By Thursday morning, the news had spread through the entire community like wildfire. Kelly had been officially labeled an adulteress and removed from all church positions. The pastor gave a whole sermon about the sanctity of marriage and the consequences of sin, never naming Kelly directly, but making it crystal clear who he was talking about. Her parents took a sabbatical from church leadership, too embarrassed to face their congregation. Her sister postponed her wedding that was supposed to happen at Harvest, not wanting the family scandal to overshadow her big day. The entire family was basically in exile from the community they'd been part of for generations. And Brian? He'd already requested a transfer to another church location in a different state, running away from the mess as fast as he could. He left Kelly high and dry, pregnant and alone. All the while, I just watched from the sidelines. I didn't have to lift a finger beyond that initial evidence drop. The community she valued most had done all the heavy lifting for me. See, the thing about small religious communities is that they're connected to everything in people's lives. Kelly's church downfall created a domino effect I couldn't have planned better if I tried. First, the private Christian school where she worked part-time suddenly had budget cuts and eliminated her position. The principal couldn't even look her in the eye when he delivered the news. Then her volunteer roles started drying up one by one. The Crisis Pregnancy Center, where she counseled young women, decided her current situation made her a poor role model for their clients. The charity where she organized donation drives announced they were restructuring their volunteer program and no longer needed her services. One by one, every part of her identity was stripped away, while I just kept paying that alimony check each month, right on time. 3 weeks after the church scandal broke, I got a text from our old neighbor. Kelly's living in her car in the Walmart parking lot. I didn't respond, but I drove by later that night out of curiosity. Sure enough, there was her Honda parked in the far corner of the lot. I could see her silhouette in the driver's seat, illuminated by the blue glow of her phone screen. The next day, she called me again. I lost my job, she said, her voice flat and emotionless. No tears this time, just hollow defeat. That sucks, I replied neutrally. The baby's due in 5 months. No one will hire me. My parents still won't talk to me. I said nothing, just letting the silence stretch between us. I've been sleeping in my car, she finally admitted. I can't afford both a car payment and an apartment on just the alimony. Sounds like poor financial planning, I observed. She exhaled sharply, frustration evident in her voice. Is this what you wanted? To see me completely destroyed? I thought about it for a second, considering the question honestly. You know what? Yeah, pretty much. I was stupid. I made a mistake. I never meant to hurt you, she said, her voice cracking slightly. I cut her off. I don't care. She choked out a sob. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I smirked to myself, feeling nothing but cold satisfaction. Cool. Good luck with your new life. And that's when I decided to play my final card. Time to end this on my terms. Actually, I said, keeping my voice casual, I might have a solution that works for both of us. What kind of solution? Kelly asked, suddenly alert. I could practically hear the desperation in her voice. I'm getting tired of writing these monthly checks, I said nonchalantly. And my business is expanding. I'm looking at opening an office in Vancouver, might move there for a while. What does that have to do with me? She asked cautiously. Well, international alimony enforcement is complicated, and I've been talking to a new lawyer who thinks we might have grounds to revisit the settlement based on some creative interpretations of the law. That was total bullshit, of course, but Kelly didn't know that, and she was in no position to question me or seek legal advice of her own. What are you saying? Her voice had that edge of panic I was counting on. I'm saying I'd like to buy you out. One lump sum payment instead of monthly alimony for the next 4 years. There was silence on her end as she thought about it, weighing her desperate immediate needs against the long-term security of the alimony payments. How much? She finally asked. $85,000 cash, tax-free. You sign a document releasing me from all future obligations, and the money's yours today. Kelly had no clue I could afford that lump sum easily. The financial moves I'd made earlier had kept a significant chunk of my money safe, and my business was already bouncing back. She and her lawyer never found half of what I had. To her, $85,000 probably seemed like a lifeline. But it was less than half of what I'd owe her over the full alimony term. A massive discount for me. But to someone living in their car, pregnant and broke, it must have sounded like winning the lottery. I don't know, she stammered, uncertainty clear in her voice. My lawyer said, your lawyer isn't sleeping in a Walmart parking lot, I cut in sharply. And this offer expires in 24 hours. After that, I start the process to challenge the alimony ruling, and you get nothing while we battle it out in court for the next year or two. More silence followed as she considered her options. I could almost hear the wheels turning in her head. Can I think about it? She asked hesitantly. Sure. You've got until this time tomorrow. Then I'm moving forward with the challenge, I said with finality. I hung up without waiting for a response, knowing she would call back. She had no other cards to play. She called back just 2 hours later exactly as I predicted. I'll take it, she said quietly, defeat evident in every syllable. Smart choice, I replied coolly. I'll have the paperwork ready in the morning. Meet me at my lawyer's office at 9 a.m. Tom, her voice was small, almost childlike. Thank you. I almost laughed at the absurdity of her gratitude. Don't thank me, Kelly. This isn't mercy. It's business. The next morning, she showed up at the lawyer's office looking like absolute hell. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, her hair was unwashed, and she was wearing the same clothes I'd seen her in through the car window at Walmart. My lawyer had the paperwork ready, a complete release of all future alimony obligations in exchange for a one-time payment. I'd already had the cashier's check prepared. Kelly barely read the documents before signing them, her desperation palpable in the air. When my lawyer slid the check across the table, her hands trembled as she picked it up, staring at it like it was a life raft in a stormy sea. So that's it? She asked, still seeming stunned by how quickly everything had changed. We're done? I nodded firmly. Completely done? I don't ever want to hear from you again. She looked like she wanted to say something more, perhaps make one last attempt at an apology, but instead just nodded and walked out, shoulders slumped in defeat. As the door closed behind her, my lawyer shook his head incredulously. You know, most guys in your position wouldn't have offered her anything. I told him it was worth $85,000 to be free of her forever, and I meant it. The monthly payments weren't hurting me financially, but they were a constant reminder of how she'd played me for a fool. Now I was completely cut loose, free to move on without her shadow hanging over me. Besides, I knew Kelly. She'd burn through that money in 6 months tops, with nothing to show for it and no backup plan. And then she'd have nothing. No alimony, no job prospects, no safety net. Meanwhile, I'd be building my empire, living my best life, and never looking back. I ran into her about 6 months later at a gas station. I hadn't planned it. Just one of those random coincidences that life throws at you sometimes. She looked rough, still pregnant or maybe pregnant again. I didn't ask and didn't care. She was driving some beat-up old Civic instead of the nice car she had during our marriage. She saw me filling up my new BMW and kind of froze like a deer in headlights. I nodded at her just to be civil, and she walked over hesitantly, uncertainty written all over her face. There was awkward silence between us for a moment. Then she said, "How are you?" I shrugged casually. "Business is good, life is good." She nodded, looking down at her feet. That's good." More awkward silence followed. "The money's gone," she finally admitted, not meeting my eyes. "I had to pay off debt and the rest went to rent and food." I just looked at her impassively. "Not my problem. I know, I don't know why I'm telling you this." I finished pumping gas and replaced the nozzle, ready to leave this conversation behind. "Well, good luck with everything." I started to get back in my car, but she called after me. "I'm sorry, Tom. For everything. I really am." I looked at her for a long moment, taking in the person she had become. Was it satisfying to see her like this? Honestly, not as much as I thought it would be. But I didn't feel bad for her either. She had made her choices, and now she was living with the consequences. "Too little, too late, Kelly," I said simply, then got in my car and drove away. I haven't seen her since that day at the gas station, and I hope I never do again. That chapter of my life is firmly closed. Things for me have been going pretty well since then. I met this amazing woman about a year after the divorce was finalized. She's incredible, runs her own graphic design agency, works hard, plays hard, and doesn't play games or pull any bullshit. She's straightforward and honest in a way that Kelly never was. We moved in together 3 months ago, and while I'm in no rush to get married again, once bitten, twice shy, and all that, I could actually see it happening someday with her. She's the real deal. I've tried to stay out of Kelly's business completely, but in a town this size, Information travels whether you want it to or not. Plus, we still have some mutual acquaintances who occasionally drop bits of information my way, even when I don't ask. That $85,000 I gave her? Gone in about 4 months, just as I predicted. Apparently, she used some to pay off credit card debt I didn't even know she had. Got a cheap apartment, and then blew through the rest trying to maintain the lifestyle she was accustomed to instead of adjusting to her new reality. Classic Kelly. She never could budget worth a damn. She had the baby, a boy. Brian is legally on the hook for child support, but from what I hear, he's a deadbeat who's always behind on payments. He moved to Ohio, like I mentioned before, and has basically nothing to do with the kid. Guess his calling to youth ministry didn't extend to his own offspring. Not surprising in the least. Kelly tried to restart her teaching career, but her reputation followed her everywhere she went. No Christian school would touch her with a 10-foot pole, and public schools wanted recent experience she didn't have after her years away from the profession. Last I heard, she's working at some call center, making barely above minimum wage and struggling to make ends meet. The real karma is what happened with her family. Her parents eventually forgave her after about 8 months of shunning, but things are still super strained between them. They help with the baby sometimes, but are always making comments about poor life choices and living with consequences. Her sister keeps her distance, apparently worried Kelly's tarnished reputation might affect her own standing in the church community. Kelly tried to rejoin the church community, but it didn't go well. They let her attend services. They couldn't exactly ban her from worship, but she's permanently barred from any leadership roles. She sits in the back pew and leaves right after the service ends, avoiding the social hour that follows. No more women's ministry, no more marriage retreats, no more social status as the perfect Christian woman. Her fall from grace was complete and irreversible. The ultimate irony? I heard from a mutual friend that she's been telling people she made a mistake, and that she should have worked on her marriage instead of having an affair. Too bad that realization came far too late to make any difference. As for me, I'm doing better than ever. My business is booming. We've expanded into new markets and doubled our client roster in the past year. My relationship is solid and fulfilling, built on mutual respect and honest communication. And I've started doing some stuff I always wanted to try, but never had time for when I was with Kelly. I got my pilot's license recently, took up mountain biking, and even started learning to play guitar. Turns out I'm not half bad at it. The lesson I learned through all of this? Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you leads to the best version of your life. You just have to be willing to burn the bridges that need burning and never look back with regret. The day Kelly told me she was pregnant with another man's child was both the worst and best day of my life. It was the end of a marriage that was already dead, and the beginning of the freedom I needed to build something better. So I guess that's it. I probably won't update on this whole drama again, since I'm honestly not thinking about Kelly much these days. I've got better things to focus on: my business, my relationship, my hobbies, my future. Her chapter in my life is firmly closed. Oh, and one final note for anyone going through something similar: document everything. Take screenshots, save texts, gather evidence, keep records. It might not help in court in no-fault divorce states, but information is power. And you never know when you'll need that power to protect yourself or to expose the truth. Looking back now, I can see that while the legal system might not have given me the justice I deserved, life has a way of balancing the scales eventually. She thought she was setting me up for failure, but in the end, she was only setting up her own downfall. And I emerged from the ashes of that marriage stronger, wiser, and ultimately happier than I ever was with her. Has it all been easy? No. There were dark days when the anger and betrayal threatened to consume me. Nights where I wondered what I could have done differently. Moments where the unfairness of it all seemed overwhelming. But I pushed through, focused on rebuilding, and refused to let her actions define my future. Now, as I sit here writing this from the deck of my new house, watching the sunset with a cold beer and my girlfriend reading beside me, I can honestly say I wouldn't change a thing. Every painful step led me exactly where I needed to be. If there's anything you take away from my story, let it be this: trust your instincts, protect yourself, and remember that sometimes losing what you thought you wanted opens the door to what you truly need.